After finishing her studies on internal medicine, Dr. Laura Mckay was recruited as a primary care physician at the BII hospital in Michigan. This was a small branch of the BII hospitals and was rather limited by its doctors and available treatment. But in only a few weeks of working here, Laura loved her job, the patients she dealt with, and even her colleagues. Some were polite, while others had to be tolerated. Like Dr. Claude McGregor, he had been like a mentor and a good friend since Laura started working. So how's everything going? I've kind of fallen into a little issue, Dr. McGregor, and I totally take responsibility of it, but if Dr. Atkins finds out, this will be awfully humiliating. Oh boy, if there's anything I know about Dr. Atkins, he doesn't take it easy on the newbies. What happened? One of my patients was supposed to undergo surgery tomorrow. Today his reports came in, and he took aspirin just 2 days prior, and it's compromised the timing of his surgery. And it's all on me because I'm the one who forgot to discuss the use of blood thinners with him. You mean all the preparations and arrangements have to be postponed till a few weeks? I don't know how I was so careless. It's all right. We're all human here. We forget. I'll talk to Dr. Atkins about it. Laura breathed out in relief, knowing at least there was someone to speak in her favor. A lot of the doctors around here had a good relationship with Dr. McGregor. He was much more understanding and considerate. As for Dr. Gerald Atkins, everyone, especially the newbies, knew not to get on his bad side. Dr. Atkins was the chief physician, responsible for managing the hospital's budget, recruiting and training physicians, etc. But more generally, Dr. Atkins was known for picking out the faults of his subordinates. Checking her clipboard, Laura returned to making rounds about her patients. Nancy, where is that patient from yesterday? Ronald Miller? He didn't have insurance. So what if he didn't have insurance? He needed immediate care. Dr. Laura, I think you haven't heard of Dr. Atkins' policy. You think we're here to treat every sick person that walks in the door? You send them right back out. But Dr. Atkins, what if it's a life or death situation? Unless you're going to pay for it, the only thing you give them is their death certificates the next morning. Ridiculous newcomers. Laura sighed as she watched the nurse fix up the empty bed. Life could be so difficult sometimes. She moved on to meet another patient. Her name was Anna Williams. She was a lovely, cheerful young woman. She was admitted after an accident in which she had broken many of her bones. Her journey here had been difficult, but she was improving. How are you feeling, Anna? Better, Doc. All thanks to you. I was thinking, after the hip surgery, will it be possible for me to return to dancing? You love dancing, don't you? Ballet, right? Wow, you remembered? I've been doing ballet since I was a child. Why wouldn't I remember? All my patients are special to me. I don't want to let you down, and at the same time, I don't want to give you false hope. It's okay, Doc. I understand. It's just that it's been a dream. I guess dreams aren't meant to be real anyway. Laura felt heartbroken seeing the young woman so upset. She admired her for her strength through it all. Don't say that. It's not the end. Perhaps we can try therapy. We'll find a way. After completing her rounds, Dr. Laura was called in by Dr. Atkins for a talk. Yes, Dr. Atkins? Come in, Laura. Laura sat down in front of Dr. Atkins as he turned in his chair and folded his arms. Laura, since you're new here, you're probably not aware of the function that takes place here annually. It will be held on the next weekend, and I need the best of our staff to be there, because this function serves a very important cause for this hospital. Many elite members of the community will be attending it, and with the proper dialogue and impressions made, they might just make considerable donations to this hospital, so I advise you be prepared. Laura had assumed she was in trouble, but instead Atkins invited her to a party. Laura spoke to some colleagues about the function. She learned that those among the staff who were able to get these rich folk to contribute were rewarded with promotions. So before the next weekend, Laura prepared herself for the event. However, come the night of the party, seeing all the rich folk in the room, Laura started to feel a bit nervous. Nevertheless, she was well-spoken and an attractive young woman. Over the past 10 years, our hospital has progressed greatly in the field of orthopedics. Some of the best doctors from around the state work here, and with the right push, I know together we can reach higher goals. Over the course of the evening, she was able to get the attention of an elderly couple, who eventually agreed to donate generously to the hospital. Thank you so much. Your gesture won't go unnoticed. and we will surely give our best into making this hospital into a better place for our neighborhood." As Laura spoke and greeted many more of the guests, she met a man named Victor Mcloyd. "So how long have you been in the field, Dr. Laura Mckay?" "Well, after earning my MD at the VII Medical University, I practiced around the States, but I can't emphasize enough how rewarding it feels to work here in Michigan. The facilities are great, the doctors are caring. Indeed, competent and praiseworthy. I'm speaking to one of them right now." No, I couldn't say that. There are many other senior doctors here that are much more worthy of praise than I. But perhaps not as beautiful." Mr. Mcloyd chuckled. Laura awkwardly chuckled on with him. "Would a beautiful doctor like you be able to spare some time for a drink?" "Why not?" "Wonderful. Dr. Mckay, I like the work you and your team are doing here, and I'd like to help, but I'll do so for a small favor." Mr. Mcloyd picked up 2 glasses and offered one to Laura. She nervously took it in her hands. She had been humoring and flirting with the man all evening, but she was only doing so for the fundraiser. But now, was he asking for something personal in return? Victor chuckled as he looked at the worry on Laura's face. "Dr. Atkins is well aware of the negotiation. Perhaps you would like to speak to him and let me know." Laura stood there confused and a bit scared, watching Mr. Mcloyd join the others. What negotiations? "Dr. Atkins, I was speaking to Mr. Mcloyd, and he was speaking of something regarding an agreement. I didn't quite get that." Dr. Atkins excused himself and pulled Laura aside. "It's a small price to pay, Dr. Mckay. We are and we will benefit from this. I hope this remains confidential as the donor would like." But before Laura could ask anything more, Dr. Atkins became occupied with the others again. Suddenly, she came to suspect this event was not as innocent-minded as she first supposed. Was this just a fundraiser or something more? That night turned out to be a reason of anxiety for Laura. Near 10 p.m., when she got ready to leave, she saw Mr. Mcloyd approaching her. "It was nice speaking to you, Dr. Mckay. I hope we'll get to work together again." "You too, Mr. Mcloyd. It's quite late. I should be getting home." "Hold on. If you would like, my chauffeur can drop you off." "No, that will be all right. Good night," Laura quickly said with a nervous smile. As soon as she was out the door, she took a cab and returned home. She laid down in her bed, unable to sleep that night. What was going on? What business were these people involved in? What was Dr. Atkins up to? And now was she too wrapped in all of this? The next day, when Laura came back to work, her anxiety was at its peak, worried that Dr. Atkins would call her in and discuss whatever negotiations he had with those rich folk. Laura had already prepared herself to decline any explicit offers. However, the whole morning passed and Dr. Atkins was silent on the matter. Laura continued on with her daily tasks, meeting her patients, when she suddenly realized one of her patients were missing. Miss Ann Williams. "Nancy, where is Ann? She wasn't supposed to be discharged till 2 more weeks." "Dr. Laura, I'm so sorry, but Ann Williams passed away this morning. I heard she had some complications after the surgery." "What are you talking about? She had a hip replacement surgery. Did she develop an infection? This doesn't make sense." Laura was thundered and heartbroken receiving the tragic news. Ann was recovering. After the surgery, she took her first steps with Laura just days ago. Laura immediately looked up the patient's records. That's when she became a little suspicious, seeing Ann had no symptoms or conditions leading up to her demise. But what was even more odd was the fact that her organs were donated, while Ann Williams wasn't an organ donor at all. Highly suspicious and confused, Laura hurried to the hospital morgue. There, she met Dr. Douglas Gordon. From the times she had interacted with him before, Dr. Gordon had been kind and polite. Perhaps he could give her some insight on the matter. "Dr. Gordon, you must be aware of what's going on. One of my patients, Ann Williams, I was suddenly informed of her demise this morning. Nothing from her records are making any sense, and she wasn't an organ donor yet. Her organs were sent for donation." Dr. Gordon nodded and sighed. "Dr. Mckay, this isn't the first time this is happening. They've done this before." "They?" This is how this hospital runs. Every year, these rich folk donate large sums of money in return for these healthy organs from healthy individuals. So this is what Mcloyd was speaking of. But this is illegal, Dr. Gordon. How can this go unseen? False reports are produced prior to the death, and after the procedure is done, the body is prepared for funeral and sent back to their families. No one is opening up the cadaver to see what's missing. And Dr. Atkins is aware of this? This is wrong. Why hasn't anyone said anything? I agree with you, Dr. Mckay. This is unethical, but everyone here is involved. You really don't have a choice but to comply. But Dr. Gordon, how can we keep quiet when innocent lives are being traded in as a business? We have to speak out. Dr. Mckay, I don't have the power to do anything about this. If I speak out, I'll lose my job. I'll be in trouble. Laura was thundered knowing the truth. The doctors she assumed as righteous servers of the community turned out to be involved in this. Everyone was in on it, and everyone was playing along. Fortunately, she was able to convince Dr. Gordon to help expose this racket. They filed a complaint to the police, who arrived on site for an investigation the following day. However, when speaking to the doctors, everyone denied anything suspicious. Laura, have you gone mad? Something like this would happen under my watch? Laura was thundered seeing Dr. Atkins blatantly lie to the police, but unfortunately, she had no evidence to show for her claims but that of Ann Williams' records. Officers, the question still remains, even if Ann Williams passed away a natural death, her organs are missing. Where did they go? Who were they donated to? Nothing is adding up. There must have been a mix-up. Officers, nothing like this has happened or will happen in this hospital. The police were unable to find any evidence and came to the conclusion that no rules or regulations were being violated. That evening, Laura left the hospital heavy-hearted. How was this possible that these people would escape the eyes of the authorities after committing such a heinous act? Now the last memory she had with Anne haunted her. She was such a happy young soul. Laura walked down the narrow road on her way to the bus stop. This road was always empty at this time, and now the silence was soothing in all distress. But all peace was soon disrupted when she noticed a van screeching down the road. She didn't pay much heed to it at first, until it halted to a stop in front of her. Laura widened her eyes, seeing a few men staring at her. Get her. Who are you people? You won't get away with this. Laura was pushed into the van, blindfolded, her hands tied behind her back. No matter how much she screamed, none of her questions were answered, nor was she allowed to move an inch. It was about an hour's journey later that she felt the van stop. She was dragged out of the vehicle when finally her blindfold was taken off. Laura was thundered to see she wasn't alone. These men had abducted Dr. Gordon as well. Seeing the look of dread on his face, Laura felt a sense of regret. Was this the price they were paying for trying to expose those people? The men took them inside a mansion, where suddenly Laura heard the whispers of more people as she was taken down the large hall. When she finally turned around into the grand dining hall, she suddenly noticed a few familiar faces. She was in the Mcloyd mansion. Mr. Mcloyd, shall we release them? Why, yes, of course. They're our guests. On the other side of the table, arranged with food and drinks in a lavish mansion, sat Victor Mcloyd, sipping on a glass of wine in his hands. With him were some others she recognized from the party, Dr. Atkins and others from the hospital as well, and the men that had brought her here. They were none other than the police to whom she and Dr. Gordon had complained to, working hand in hand with these elites. Victor Mcloyd got up and smiled. His heels echoed in the hall as he approached Laura. Darling, you thought I had interest in you. If only I was that good. I've invited you to join us for dinner. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.